This week in the enterprise security news, why companies should outsource cybersecurity during COVID and beyond. Sectigo adds 5 PKA DevOps integrations. A Drupal vulnerability has been released. Palo Alto Networks launches the industry's first 5G native security offering, and passwords exposed for almost 50,000 vulnerable Fortinet VPNs. We discuss which multi-factor authentication is the right one with Mark Barnett, chief strategist at 7X, and then we gain some insights into sharpening CVSS with asset context with Clayton Fields and Michael Azraf from Vicarious. Stay tuned for all that and more on this episode of Enterprise Security Weekly. This is Security Weekly, for security professionals, by security professionals. Broadcasting live from G-Unit Studios in Rhode Island, it's the show where we talk security vendors and aren't afraid to name names. It's Enterprise Security Weekly. Detecting and responding to threats in the cloud is harder than doing it on-prem. Even when you do have the visibility you need, legacy security workflows weren't designed for the speed and complexity of cloud environments. Cloud-native security solutions from ExtraHop are purpose-built to spot threats across the hybrid attack surface, provide detailed investigation steps, and help you automate response. Request your 30-day free trial at securityweekly.com/ExtraHop. Face it, your data is everywhere. No matter where your data lives or what tools you use, Imperva Data Security unifies compliance, security, and privacy needs for any data store while saving you time and money. Imperva finds threats before they become a compliance or security incident, and built-in automation empowers you to remediate quickly. Give your business confidence about what is happening with your data, where it's stored, and who's accessing it. Learn more at securityweekly.com/Imperva. Can we continue to function without facts? Cybercriminals exploit the absence of facts, harming organizations through the easiest point of entry, email. No company should claim they can stop all phishing attacks. It's about having all the facts in seconds and reducing the time it takes to respond. It's minutes versus hours in the difference between a security incident and a breach. Great Horn. See through the dark. To learn more, go to securityweekly.com/Great Horn. CyberArray for Teams was built to help organizations stay ahead of today's evolving threat landscape and to meet today's most difficult security challenges. Fortune 500 companies like Amgen, Booz Allen Hamilton, Plexus, CVP, Fannie Mae, and Vizio, small businesses worldwide, and several branches of the U.S. military use CyberArray for Teams to close the skill gaps that put their organizations at risk and to equip their workforce with the skills to defeat their security adversaries. CyberArray for Teams. Problem solved. Visit cyberarray.it/solved to solve your training problems. Welcome to Enterprise Security Weekly, episode number 208 for November 25th, 2020. I'm your host, Paul Asadorian. Matt Alderman is still on vacation, so we are joined remotely by Mr. Adrian Sanabria. Adrian, welcome.
Thank you, Paul. You're going to have to settle with me for today.
Well, you would be here anyway. I didn't say that correctly.
Right.
Adrian's here because he's always going to be here for Enterprise Security Weekly. But Matt is on vacation, and John is on vacation as well. John was teaching last week and then taking some much needed, I'm sure, time off after teaching for his class had 2,000 people in it or something like that virtually. So I was happy to hear that. And so we'll catch up hopefully with John next week. Yeah, it's good stuff. Alrighty, let's see. Would you like to have all of your favorite Security Weekly content at your fingertips, learn about upcoming webcast and technical trainings, or just wish you could hang out with the Security Weekly crew and community? Visit securityweekly.com/subscribe, where you can sign up for our mailing list, join our community Discord server, and subscribe to all of the shows on the Security Weekly network. That's securityweekly.com/subscribe. On to the enterprise security news, which it was kind of light. It was kind of a weird week because of the holiday, actually, I think.
Yeah, maybe. Maybe it was the holiday that slowed things down a bit. But still a few things to talk about.
Yeah, I tried to mix it because we don't have a Paul Security Weekly this week because it's Thanksgiving. So I tried to mix it up a little bit. The first article that I had there, Adrian, was why companies should outsource cybersecurity during COVID and beyond. I don't know that I necessarily agree with any of the points here. to be quite honest.
Yeah, I feel like, this is take advantage of COVID news story.
Yeah.
In a slow news week, let's just take a trend, a topic or something like that and throw COVID in the title there and it'll get a few more clicks.
I thought we were going to play good cop, bad cop. I was going to be bad cop, but we're both playing bad cop on this article. No. There's no defending it, is there?
No, gonna call this out for what it is. There still are some interesting things to talk about here, though. It's still very much a conversation I think we need to have, talking about the trend in outsourcing, security tasks and stuff like that. Like we created these tools that just pumped out too many alerts, so we got alert fatigue. So of course the security industry said, "Hey, we've got a solution for that too." Instead of fixing the tools and less alerts, we'll just throw some more people at it, and you pay us to manage that for you.
Yeah,
for a long time, I
don't know that. I mean, it says the reason you would outsource, which was number one, which I don't think I copied over into the notes. Organizations need to act more quickly to identify and respond to threats. I think in outsourcing can help you identify. I don't know. They can't complete the picture with response. Response, depending on the level of incident, involves people in your organization, and they're just not going to help you with that. I mean, maybe they'll help you develop a plan, but it still requires people within your organization respond, and outsourcing is not going to make that any more quick. So
back in 2017, when we stood up my company, Cybersecurity, me and my co-founder, one of the things we wanted to do was to make sure that our clients, and it was like a subscription service, they'd pay us to help them develop their security program and make sure that they're doing all the right things and they're doing it correctly. And so we'd go in, we'd screen share with them and go through their Fortinet configurations, through their Nessus configurations, make sure they hadn't screwed anything up too badly. Of course, we always found something. And one of the things during that process that we would do is test their managed providers. And the part of the market that we fit into was where you maybe had one or two security people or maybe no security people at all. So we were very much, it was kind of like a virtual CISO role, except lower down in the stack, more like a virtual security analyst or a security director or something like that. And 100% of the time, we could never get their MSSPs to call them up on the phone. Like we would do some nasty stuff on their networks, intentionally trying to bait, the managed security
trying
provider.
To get caught. Yeah.
And the customers, they're sitting there looking at their phone, waiting for their phone to light up, and nothing. 100% of the time, never got a single one to get up and make a phone call or send an email and say, "Hey, there's some shady stuff going on in your network."
Yeah.
So I think that's very much a question. Like who's, if only somebody could test these MDR and MSSP firms to see how good they are. If only there was a way to do some kind of product review.
If only, someone were spinning up a lab with really good-looking, smart people. We'll continue to tease that one out. Sectigo has added 5 PKI DevOps integrations, and I love this because I hate managing SSL certificates. I think it is a horrible task, and I always have. I can remember when I worked for the university, was some of the first times I had to do that at any kind of more of a grand scale. And back then, it was a completely manual process. It was like, oh, you've got to, I don't know, set a calendar reminder, I forget, or just look at the logs. Like we had basically manual ways to figure out when the cert was going to expire. Then you had to manually go and process it for every single server. Of course, there's much better solutions today.
And it's even worse now, though, because, back in the day, the only thing you were throwing SSL certs on was a public website.
Was your web servers, yeah. That's what we were doing it for, our Apache servers. Yeah. It was before Nginx.
Right. And then we got into J2EE, where, the app server would have a web server that would then forward content to the web server. And we started having these connections between all these web components, and then management consoles and things like that. And, before you know it, a ton of things need SSL certs to be managed. Yeah. I mean, using my favorite breach example, Equifax, the reason that they didn't know that they got hacked was because the certs were something like 18 months out of date on their SSL inspection device. So there's these days there's certs everywhere, and it's really easy to miss them.
Absolutely. Yeah. And but Sectigo, like I like DigiCert for managing certificates. I've used a number of different CA, certificate providers in the past. I really like DigiCert's interface a lot. And they really seem to be in tune with the enterprise, larger company needs to have a lot of SSL certificates. So that's my choice right now. We did some work with DigiCert in the sponsorship form. I like the team over there a lot. They do a lot in standards bodies across, not just for SSL, but for automobile manufacturers and things of the like. Sectigo gives you that kind of automation into your DevOps chain,
right,
which I think is a nice next step. I think if I could marry those two together and integrate them, that would be probably a really good solution, but I haven't tested that yet.
Yeah, and this is all about, there no more interface here, with DevOps. You want to automate as much as possible. So this is all about their integrations they're releasing for Chef, Jenkins, Puppet, Salt, all the typical stuff that you're going to use to push out that kind of stuff.
And I think that's smart, but it also underscores the importance of having integrity in your DevOps tool chain, or we used to call it the SDLC, but it is a life cycle. I think is a better term for it than just a DevOps tool chain or whatever we call it.
Right.
I think kind of it doesn't speak to the life cycle aspect of it and preserving the integrity of that, because if an attacker were able to get in there, now they can manipulate automated processes that would affect your SSL certificates.
Yeah, with lots of automation comes great responsibility, right?
And specifically, I think attackers, it seems to me that the targets are more likely your software signing certificates, application signing, more so than like the cert for your web server, like you were mentioning before, Adrian. When we've looked at nation-state attacks, especially in the past, if someone can get a hold of that software signing certificate, that's awesome, because now I can sign software as Microsoft or as a really large provider, and everyone automatically trusts it.
Yep. Yeah. We've seen those attacks a couple times. Definitely. Yeah. And man, where are you storing, the private certificates, the private keys and stuff like that? It's in my pen testing experience, I found them in ridiculous places they should not have been.
Yeah, exactly. It all, basically the trust model and security model of SSL hinges on the fact that your private key is actually private. And that's just not true of SSL either.
Right.
Canonical has pushed out a set of open source container application images in the light of security, which I think is really great. I think this really helps organizations in determining where you want to fall on the spectrum. You definitely don't want to trust by default what comes from Docker Hub. You may not want to roll your own Linux distribution and build your entire container image from scratch. You might. Most organizations, I find, fall somewhere in between.
Yeah.
And Canonical's giving you a nice set to, if you're falling in between, maybe you don't want to build everything, or not build everything from scratch, but have your own custom Nginx build like we do. Maybe you want to use Nginx's or Canonical's Nginx build and then build your customizations on top of that. It sounds like Canonical has done a good job with security. They're quoted as saying they're addressing all high and medium, or all high and critical CVEs in all of the LTS offerings and fixing critical issues within 24 hours. So if your team is not able to keep up with all the container images you have in your build process in fixing high-end criticals within 24 hours, and fixing them in 24 hours, you might want to use Canonicals, because they could be doing a better job than your team.
And committing to that for up to 10 years. So this was a huge issue with containers, because this
still is.
Yeah,
quite frankly.
So the whole idea and the trend we're seeing, with infrastructure, and with code today, is moving faster and moving faster. Whether it's using pre-built packages, from NPM, gems, if you're using Ruby, whatever you're using, there's some kind of package manager, or there's Docker images, that help you move more quickly, get that infrastructure up and going. And it's all about speed. Even Docker itself, the reason you'd want to use Docker instead of a VM is you can spin them up and tear them down so much faster. And almost every container startup we've seen has had some form of secure registry. Because there's this idea that, man, it would be really easy to create your own malicious Docker image and just throw it into the official repository, make it Nginx or something people are going to download a lot, and nobody's checking it, nobody's looking, and that very quickly, Twistlock and Aqua and all those, StackRox, they all had some form of, get your images from us instead of them. So it's interesting to see this come from Canonical, because
I was just going to say that. I mean, as much as I love all the companies you mentioned, Aqua, Twistlock, Sysdig, who's done some sponsorship. A lot of those have done sponsorships with us. Sneak also is in that list. They do fantastic work, but when it comes to a 24-hour SLA, fixing all critical and highs, and supporting that for 10 years, and ensuring that it's all going to work together, I really do trust Canonical, because they've, I think, done a great job with Ubuntu, and they're extending that knowledge out into these containers. I think it's a great offering.
Yeah, I think it makes more sense coming from someone who is used to supporting software and providing software images. That's typically not a security company's role.
Right.
That's definitely, we want to see that from, Docker itself, or from Canonical, or from Microsoft, or, one of those.
Yeah,
certainly.
Agreed. Ubuntu is very, very interesting. I really do like 2004. However, Canonical does a great job. However, if you're using snaps are still new. They're still new. And I kind of go back and forth, and oftentimes I'll install an application as a snap, which also has some containerization aspect to it as well, if you kind of dig into how snap packages work.
What are snaps? Help me out a little bit.
It's like a different, it's a different package management system. It's supposed to provide some containerization, easy way to upgrade, but some isolation for those applications. So it sounded
like
to
mobile
me,
apps.
Yeah, it sounded to me like it was a little more secure and cleaner and neater than doing a .deb package or apt package. Both still work on Ubuntu 2004. But I just did a fresh install of Ubuntu 2004 this morning, and when I did the snaps, they're working actually better than they were when 2004 first came out. But I got weird errors. I got a permissions, a pop-up in the GUI that was oh, you have permissions errors. And when I looked at the permissions, it was owned by root, and I think it was trying to do stuff before I gave it my sudo password to actually install the application. So there's just weird bugs with Snap, and it's getting better. But even still, with relation to this article, I do trust Canonical, because they've got some great people doing great work in terms of packaging the operating system, Snap packages, and now containers as well. And their container image is awesome too. Ubuntu 2004's Docker image container is really awesome. I've used it in a few projects, and I really like it.
And hot patching Linux kernels is coming along.
I haven't enabled that.
Stuff happening there.
I've been afraid to enable that, and
I've heard it's like the snaps. It's not quite
there yet. And mine are desktops, so the three systems that are Ubuntu 2004 that I use on a regular basis are all desktops or laptops, and I'm I don't need to hot patch. If I need to patch and reboot, I'll patch and reboot. It's totally fine. Some of my server applications, though, I do want to play around with that feature.
You are a brave man, braver than me, rolling Linux on your main production desktop there.
It's been quite a journey, and I'll tell you what, there's few things I'm finding more and more that I can't do or that I don't like. I'm really at the point where I don't know that I would have any less or any more problems if I was Mac or Windows, to be quite honest.
Yeah, a long time ago, I decided I'm going to have one of each. So I'm using my Mac here. My my video audio over Skype is coming from my Windows laptop. We've had some problems with the Mac, so we're testing that out. See if that's a little bit better with the latency and some of the bandwidth problems we've been having. Been thinking maybe that's not internet, that's Mac. And then I've got Linux on a laptop as well. for when I need Linux to do things. So
it's interesting, Adrian.
I've succumbed, and laptops are cheap. Yeah, so I've got one
for an enterprise environment. I think that you're either going to be Windows or you're likely going to be Linux, because I think first, Microsoft has great support for Linux, and we're Office 3 or we're at Microsoft 365 now, or whatever they're calling it. They're going to change the name again, I'm convinced, but I get better support, I think, on Linux for a lot of things, Microsoft and enterprise, than you do on a Mac OS. I think Mac OS is largely for the creators, and there's two different buckets for that. There's the everyday people that want email and want stuff to work and be a stable environment and like the Apple products and the integration with their phones. If you're iPhone, you should definitely, you got to be all in. Leo Laporte had a great analogy. He said Apple makes it, he's like, it's like a warm bath. He's like, it's comfortable. You sink in the warm bath of Apple, and everything should just work, and it should be easy. Right. And I'm okay with that. I think they've done a great job targeting that user base. I also think on the very high end creator market, they've got some fantastic products. In the enterprise, I think you're largely going to see Windows and probably Linux. To be quite honest, I mean, they make Teams for Linux. Who would have thought that I'd be running Linux, installing Microsoft software like Teams? I think that's cool. Yeah,
Apple is still very much the fashion statement, which you absolutely see with their special edition watches and phones and stuff like that. And you will have the executives and the IT folks and the dev folks that demand a Mac. They don't want to work on anything else. So I think most enterprises are going to be like my house. You're going to have a mix of all three.
Yeah.
Drupal, and it's become more and more important for people to be able to support all three. I think we've moved past the point of, Mac is crap, Windows is crap, Linux is best, Linux will never be on the desktop, and just admit, okay, we need to be able to support all of these things all at the same time.
And that provides some security challenges, I think, to support all three operating systems. Solutions have gotten better about supporting all three operating systems. We've chosen our solutions for security. Specifically, the first requirement is you have to support all three operating systems, because that allows us the flexibility. And actually, it is a requirement today. But when
startups will have support for all three, right out of the gate. Like that'll be, Mac and Linux will be further down the roadmap, or in some cases, Superhuman, the email client, they're focusing on just the iOS and the Mac experience right now. If you've got Windows and Android, you just got to wait.
Yeah. And it is interesting. I think smart organizations will consolidate to messaging platforms that work across all the major platforms, but consolidate their messaging. That, I think, provides a great opportunity for security to say, look, this is what we're using for messaging. And because today it's a hot mess. I've got Slack, Discord, Teams, Zoom, and Skype. And
I mean, if it works in a web browser, if you're running Chrome, there you go. And Chrome is the underlying OS is.
Chrome is that common denominator. Absolutely, absolutely. But I think we're going to have to start consolidating these messaging and video platforms, because it's going to be really hard for security teams to develop policies and keep these things secure. I'm sure many of us are listening to this going, oh my God, that's my struggle today, is I got to manage configuration security and patching and just regular security, like identity security in all these different applications. And now they've all got overlapping functionality. Discord does video chat, so does Slack. So what do you do for that? I really like Signal for a messaging platform, but you're going to have to make these decisions.
Definitely.
If you do have Drupal and you need to make a decision to patch, it sounds like you need to be patching the latest vulnerability, which is a critical vulnerability, and a malicious file with double extensions can be exploited for code execution. ExtraHop actually released a press statement on it, and there are lots of documentation out there for this particular vulnerability. So over your holiday break, probably want to be addressing your publicly facing Drupal servers, especially ones that are critical to your business function. We'll actually talk about how to make those decisions, not just based on criticality, in a segment coming up with Vicarious.
Yeah, and Drupal is still pretty popular. It's the fifth most popular CMS out there still. Yeah, I know a lot of people think it's just WordPress these days, but and looking at the market share, WordPress is 63.8%. The next closest is 5%. So I mean, they very much have taken over that category. But Drupal with 2.5%, you're still talking about millions of websites worldwide running Drupal.
Let's see. Respawn Software joins the FireEye team. Respawn Software is the creator, according to the article, of AI-based cloud-native XDR engine. Wow. Did I say that again? An AI-based cloud-native XDR engine. That's some buzzwords right there.
Yeah, that's a mouthful. And XDR, might be worth. XDR is pretty new. I don't know how often you talk about it, Paul, but it might be worth just touching on what XDR is. I'm still new to that acronym.
Yeah, I mean, they're saying it's extended detection and response, and I think that's the amount of telemetry you can get from. I don't know if it's limited to just endpoints or not. I think people have different kind of takes on it.
Yeah, I think most of the XDR I've seen has been network based. I've seen a lot of XDR firms that are basically like Zeek and Suricata. Zeek being what used to be called Bro. So a lot of the ones that I've seen are network based, and they're not trying to take the place of an IDS. They're like the original FireEye. They're trying to focus on the be a little bit more targeted with their detections. And start to alleviate that alert fatigue issue.
Yeah, I don't. My recommendation is not to get caught up so much on the buzzwords and what these things are called. Focus on what they do, but make sure that you're developing requirements in 4 areas for what I call indicators of compromise. And people know my enchanted quadrants very well for this. Is that you want to collect telemetry or data from the endpoints, from the network, and from your logs in general, right? So those are your servers, cloud, other applications. Collect those logs, what we traditionally would term as SIM. And then you also have threat intelligence that helps you in those quadrants. And whether it's an XDR that's helping you get it from the network or some next generation endpoint technology, you need to develop a plan and requirements for what you're going to collect, how you're going to collect it, what you're going to do with it, how are you going to process and analyze it, and then what your responses are once you've done all of that. And there's so many different ways to skin this cat. We've got several sponsors that are helping with almost every aspect of this. And it comes down to you need to define your requirements, not get caught up on, I need XDR. No, you need to develop your requirements, figure out what you want to collect from the network, how you want to do it, and what value it's going to bring, and do the cost analysis, and then how you're going to analyze and respond to that. So I make it sound easy. It's really not.
Yeah. It looks like Respond is much more broad. They're talking about integrating with over 65 vendors in EDR, endpoint protection categories, IDS, IPS, SIM. So it looks more like a roll up. Like send us all your stuff, and almost like a very detection focused SIM. Is a way I might think of it here, and the combination with FireEye is interesting because they're throwing it in there, and it looks like they're offering it along with Mandiant Advantage, which is a combination of threat intel and some. We're seeing a lot of stuff like managed detection and response firms that are not exactly MSSP. You're not throwing everything over the wall. It's more like what Red Canary does in companies like that, where it's like assisted detection and response, where somebody will call you up on the phone and say, hey, you should probably take a look at this. And it's interesting on 2 fronts, because on one, it sounds like we're basically saying, yeah, this is really tough for people to do in-house. Their SOCs can't quite handle the number of alerts. They can't handle the triage. Maybe they don't have the skills to combine the threat intel, put all this together, and find get the signal out of the noise. And yeah, I mean, it says something about AI too. Here it is, AI right in the title of this product, and then right after that, they're saying, yeah, we're also having to throw humans at it. to make it work.
But Cactus in the chat is like, is that current AI technology or next generation AI technology?
It's continuous next gen. It's always next gen.
Yeah, it's always next gen. Next gen.
Next gen.
We're a little over time. I did want to get to passwords exposed for 50,000 vulnerable Fortinet VPNs. This is not necessarily Fortinet's fault. Look, everyone has vulnerabilities. They had a vulnerability, they fixed it, and they warned their customers and continued to warn their customers that you should fix this, because if someone can basically glean the usernames and passwords of your VPN users from it, and it's very critical and you should fix this. Not everyone has fixed it, which led someone to post 50,000 usernames and passwords of VPN users on the internet. So that's bad.
Yeah, I mean, there's a reason that Microsoft will just reboot your stuff and patch it,
right?
Without asking nicely. Sometimes, they'll notify you before, but if you ignore it, they'll just do it for you. And Chrome and Mac aren't quite as pushy, but yeah, we know the human behavior here. People aren't going to do it; they're not going to get to it. So if you don't have any way to automatically push it, I mean, the mobile platforms, both Google and Apple, have the ability to just rip stuff right off your phone. They can uninstall apps if they determine that they're malicious. So yeah, anytime we see something like this, I mean, they can, Fortinet can email till they're blue in the face, but they'll have a certain percentage of customers that it just won't do it.
That will conclude the news for this week. Stick around. Matt Barnett from 7X is coming up next.